All right, welcome to the deep dive. You're diving in because, well, you've probably heard about fasting, right? Maybe you've tinkered with it a bit, read some stuff, or you're just curious what's really behind all the buzz. It can feel like a modern health trend sometimes.
Yeah, it does get framed that way.
But as this stack of sources you've shared shows, it's actually, well, it's ancient. One of humanity's oldest practices, really.
Absolutely. We've got articles, little research bits, notes here covering, well, everything from the physical side to the deeper wisdom behind it.
And our job today is to kind of guide you through all this material.
Yep. Cut through the noise, pull out the really valuable insights. Think of it as a shortcut to understanding not just the what and how.
But the why, right? The why of mindful fasting and maybe what it could mean for you.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this then. So if we go beyond just, the simple idea of not eating for a bit, what's the biggest physical shift the sources talk about when you actually enter that fasted state? What's really happening, like, under the hood?
Okay, so the core thing, the mechanism the sources really hammer home is this metabolic switch.
A metabolic switch.
Yeah. When you're not constantly feeding your body glucose, sugar from food, it has to change tactics. It transitions from burning that sugar for energy to burning stored fat instead.
Ah, okay. That's ketosis, right?
That's the state, yeah, often called ketosis. And getting into that state is like fundamental to unlocking a lot of the benefits these sources are talking about.
Got it. And it's this switch then that kicks off everything else, all those benefits listed in the sources.
Pretty much, yeah. That shift allows for a whole cascade of things.
So what are some of the key physical payoffs the sources highlight once you're in that state?
Well, the sources detail quite a few. Big improvements in hormonal balance, for one, especially increasing insulin sensitivity.
Which means your body uses sugar better.
Exactly, more efficiently when you do eat. And they also note a pretty significant boost in human growth hormone, HGH.
HGH, right. That's for repair and muscle.
Yeah, crucial for tissue repair, helps maintain muscle mass even while fasting, and definitely helps with fat metabolism.
Okay, interesting. And what about, like, on the cellular level?
Yeah.
I know autophagy gets mentioned a lot.
It does, yeah. And the sources really position it as a major benefit. Autophagy is, it's essentially the body's deep cleaning process.
Deep cleaning.
Kind of. During fasting, it really ramps up. It clears out damaged cells, old proteins, other junk, and it recycles the useful bits. It's like vital for keeping your cells healthy long term.
And fasting really activates that.
It's one of the most potent ways to activate it, according to these sources.
Wow. Okay, so beyond the cells, what about the gut? Does fasting help there too?
Oh, yeah, definitely. The sources point out that just giving your digestive system a break is huge. It allows it to, rest, heal, reset. This can help the good gut bacteria flourish. It can improve the integrity of the gut lining.
Which helps with things like leaky gut.
Potentially, yeah. And it contributes to reducing systemic inflammation overall. By easing that digestive load, your body can basically redirect energy elsewhere.
Like detoxification.
Exactly, like supporting those detox processes.
So reduced inflammation seems like a really big theme running through all these sources.
Absolutely. Lowering those inflammation markers comes up again and again. It's mentioned as a consistent physical benefit across, different types of fasting. And that contributes to overall metabolic health, maybe even disease prevention.
Okay, these physical changes sound pretty powerful. But, the sources also spend a lot of time on the non-physical stuff.
Mental, emotional.
Yeah, even spiritual dimensions. How does all that connect back to this metabolic switch we were talking about?
It's actually fascinating how intertwined it all is. Like, when your blood sugar is stable, which happens more easily when you're fat adapted from fasting.
Right, no more sugar crashes.
Exactly. You avoid those peaks and valleys that can really mess with your mood and focus. Plus, the sources highlight an increase in something called BDNF.
BDNF.
Brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It basically supports the growth and function of your neurons.
Ah, so brain health.
Yeah. And for a lot of people, this translates into, better mental clarity, sharper focus, sometimes even a greater sense of emotional calm. It's not just willpower making you feel clearer. There are real physiological reasons.
That makes sense. It also feels like it just creates space, doesn't it, mentally and emotionally?
That's a really crucial insight from the material, I think.
Yeah.
That pause from constantly eating or even just thinking about food, it creates this kind of void. But it's not necessarily an empty one. It's more like a space where feelings, thoughts, maybe underlying needs can actually surface without being immediately, stuffed down or soothed by food.
So it invites reflection.
Yeah, exactly. It can reveal habitual patterns, help you build some emotional resilience, maybe.
And connecting back to those ancient roots you mentioned right at the start, the spiritual side.
Yes, the sources really underscore fasting's historical role here. It pops up in spiritual practices across almost every culture you can think of.
Like Ramadan, Lent.
Ramadan, Lent, various traditions in Buddhism and Hinduism, even indigenous vision quests. It's consistently been used as a path to, well, deepen awareness, cultivate discipline, gratitude, maybe find a sense of purpose. There's a really powerful passage in one of the sources describing it as a voluntary emptying that allows for a different kind of fullness.
Wow, I like that.
Yeah. It's a way to connect with something beyond just the immediate physical need, reminding us what really nourishes the spirit.
So it's really clear from all this material that fasting is, well, it's truly holistic, isn't it? It impacts the body, the mind, the spirit. And it's got this ancient wisdom that's now being kind of backed up by modern science.
Exactly. It's a rest and a reset on multiple levels.
That synthesis of old and new is really compelling.
Yeah, that's a key takeaway from these sources, I think. It's not just another diet. It's more like a discipline for overall well-being.
Okay, so let's say someone listening is intrigued by all this.
Yep.
They want to try it, but maybe they feel a bit, I don't know, hesitant. Or they just don't know where to begin beyond don't eat.
Right.
What guidance do these sources offer on starting out gently?
Well, the universal message really across all the sources is start gently and listen to your body.
Okay.
The sources are very clear. This isn't about jumping into extremes right away. It's much more about tuning into your body's signals and finding a rhythm that feels, well, sustainable for you.
And is there like a simple phased approach suggested?
Yes, they offer a really accessible way in. The first step is often just aiming for a 12-hour fast.
12 hours.
Yeah. And for most people, that's simply not eating after dinner until 12 hours later. Finish eating at 7 p.m., wait until 7 a.m. the next day.
Okay, that actually sounds pretty manageable. Many people might be doing that already.
Exactly. You might be doing it without even realizing it.
Okay.
So that's step one.
And then you build from there?
Yep. Step two is just gradually expanding that window, maybe over a week or two. Try for 13 hours, then maybe 14. That popular 16.8 method, 16 hours fasting, 8-hour eating window, that's a common goal people aim for eventually. But the sources really stress you don't have to leap straight to that.
Right. Take your time.
Absolutely. And then step three is maybe the most important for making it stick long term. Stay flexible.
Flexible.
Yeah. Remember, this is a tool to support your life, not some rigid rule you have to follow perfectly every day. Adjust your schedule based on how you feel, your energy levels, maybe social events, or even your menstrual cycle if you're a woman.
Okay, that's helpful. The sources even included some sample weekly plans that showed different fasting windows on different days.
Right, which really models that flexibility. It makes it less intimidating than thinking, oh gosh, I have to do 16 hours every single day no matter what.
Yeah, exactly.
And what you consume during your fasting window is also important, even though it's not food. Your morning routine can actually really set you up well.
Okay, so let's talk about drinks. What's actually okay to have during the fast? Water, obviously.
Definitely water. Deep hydration first thing is crucial. Plain water, still or sparkling, totally fine.
Can you add anything? Like lemon?
A small splash of lemon juice is generally okay, or a tiny pinch of sea salt for electrolytes. Apple cider vinegar, like a teaspoon diluted in a big glass of water, is also mentioned. Some sources suggest it might have metabolic benefits without really breaking the fast.
What about teas? Coffee?
Herbal teas are great. Things like peppermint, ginger, chamomile, nettle, dandelion root, all excellent choices. And black coffee.
Ah, the big question.
Yeah. Black coffee is generally considered fine for most people during a fast. The key is black. No milk, no cream, no sugar, definitely no artificial sweeteners.
Okay, and the principle here. Why are these drinks okay when food isn't? What makes them different?
So the sources explain the general rule of thumb is this. If it has 0 or almost 0 calories, and it doesn't trigger a significant digestive response or spike your insulin,
Then it probably won't interrupt that fasted state.
exactly. It won't interrupt the metabolic state like fat burning or autophagy that you're aiming for. These drinks hydrate you. They might provide some minerals, and they can support your body without really shifting it out of that fasting mode.
Got it. It sounds like the fasting window isn't just about not eating then. It can actually be used for other, supportive practices.
Oh, absolutely. The sources really highlight this. They suggest incorporating gentle movement,
Like exercise.
Gentle exercise, think walking, light stretching, maybe some gentle yoga, or even qigong. The emphasis is really on low to moderate activity, not going for intense workouts, especially when you're just starting out.
Okay. And besides movement.
They also strongly recommend mindfulness practices, things like breath work, maybe some journaling, quiet reflection, or even just spending time in nature.
Like going for a walk outside.
Yeah, or even just sitting in the sunlight, maybe walking barefoot on the grass for a few minutes if you can, grounding yourself.
So it's about turning that physical pause into more of a space for mental and emotional presence, too.
Exactly. These practices can really deepen the benefits. They shift fasting from being just about, abstaining from food into more of an active ritual of renewal and connection with yourself.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So once you've maybe dipped your toe in with that gentle start, you begin to see that fasting isn't just one single rigid thing.
Not at all.
The sources explore quite a few different methods, actually.
Yeah, they do. And a really key takeaway here is that the best method is the one that works for you. For your body, your lifestyle, your goals, it's definitely not one size fits all.
So what are some of the more common styles that the sources cover?
Well, intermittent fasting, or IF, is probably the most widely discussed. That's the general term for cycling between periods of eating and fasting within a day.
Like the 16.8 we mentioned.
Exactly. 16.8 is super popular, but there are gentler versions too, like 14.10, fasting for 14 hours, eating in a 10-hour window. The sources note IF is flexible, can fit into routines pretty easily, and it's often helpful just for curbing that evening snacking habit.
Right. Okay, and what about time-restricted eating, or TRE? Is that the same thing, or is it different?
It's very similar. Yeah, it definitely falls under the IF umbrella, but the specific focus with TRE is often on consistency and aligning your eating window with your body's natural circadian rhythm.
Circadian rhythms, like your internal clock.
Exactly. So, for example, maybe consistently eating only between, say, 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. during daylight hours. The sources suggest this approach might particularly support things like digestion, hormone balance, and even sleep quality because you're working with your body's natural clock, not against it.
Interesting. Okay, what about some of the more intensive methods, like alternate day fasting?
Right, ADF, alternate day fasting. That involves alternating between days of normal eating and days where you either fast completely or eat very, very little, maybe around 500 calories.
Wow, that sounds tough.
It definitely requires more discipline, yeah. The sources mention it can yield perhaps more significant metabolic benefits for some people, but they also caution it's generally not recommended for beginners or for folks with certain health conditions, especially without supervision.
And the longer fasts, like fasting for a whole day or more.
Yeah, the sources mention 24-hour fasts, often done like dinner one day to dinner the next day, as a manageable step beyond daily IF that some people do occasionally. But extended fasts, the ones lasting multiple days, those are mentioned, but with strong cautions. They require significant preparation, real care during the fast, and ideally medical supervision because there are more potential risks involved.
Okay, good to know.
Okay.
They also mention something that isn't technically a fast, but kind of mimics it.
Ah, yes. Fasting mimicking diets, or FMDs.
Right. What are those exactly?
So these are specific structured plans, usually low-calorie, mostly plant-based, and you follow them for typically about 5 days. The sources explain they're designed to trick your body into activating many of the same cellular benefits of fasting.
Like autophagy?
Yeah, like autophagy and those metabolic shifts, but while still allowing you to eat small amounts of specific foods. It's presented as maybe a gentler way to access some of those deeper benefits if traditional water-only fasting feels too difficult or isn't advisable for someone.
Okay, so it's really reassuring that there are different paths, different options, depending on what feels right and safe for you personally.
Absolutely. That's the underlying message throughout these sources, really. Find a method that feels sustainable and supportive for you, not something that feels like punishment.
Right. Now, the sources also do a good job of preparing you for the actual experience of fasting, which, let's be honest, isn't always sunshine and roses, especially at first.
No, definitely not.
What should someone expect, both physically and emotionally?
Yeah. This is where that advice about listening to your body becomes really practical and important. The sources acknowledge that fasting is definitely a layered experience. One really common challenge, obviously, is hunger.
Yeah. How do the sources help you deal with that?
Yeah.
Or differentiate between types of hunger?
They draw a pretty clear distinction between what they call true physiological hunger, that gradual physical sensation telling you your body genuinely needs fuel, and what's often habitual or emotional hunger.
Habitual hunger, like just eating because it's lunchtime.
Exactly. Or because you're bored or stressed or you just want the comfort of food. It's often linked to routine or psychological triggers, not actual physical need.
So what's the tip for dealing with that?
The really powerful tip they offer is to just pause when you feel those hunger pangs. Take a breath and ask yourself, okay, is this true physical hunger right now? Or is this maybe a habit or an emotion I'm feeling?
Just checking in.
Just checking in. And what happens if it feels more like a habit or an emotion? Often simply acknowledging it, maybe taking a few deep breaths or sipping some water or herbal tea, can actually help that wave of craving pass. It teaches you that hunger isn't always an emergency signal you have to react to immediately.
Okay. What about those early days, though, when
Yeah.
your body is still adjusting? I imagine there could be some less pleasant side effects.
Oh yeah, the sources are definitely upfront about potential temporary detox symptoms. As your body makes that switch from burning sugar to fat, and as it starts cleaning house, you might experience things like headaches.
Ugh, headaches.
Yeah, or fatigue, maybe some brain fog, feeling a bit irritable or moody, maybe mild digestive changes.
So feeling kind of crummy is normal at first.
It can be, yeah. They frame these as pretty normal signs of adjustment and detoxification, not necessarily a sign that something's terribly wrong, unless they're really severe or they just don't go away after a few days.
Okay. And how can you support your body through that adjustment phase?
The sources suggest really leaning into those supportive practices we talked about, doubling down on hydration, making sure you're getting enough electrolytes like salt.
Right.
Prioritizing rest, really important. Engaging in just gentle movement, not pushing yourself too hard. And some people find things like dry brushing the skin or taking Epsom salt baths helpful to support the body's natural detox pathways.
Okay. What about energy levels? Do they just plummet when you start fasting?
Well, energy can definitely fluctuate, especially initially. You might feel a dip as your body transitions away from relying on glucose all the time. However, a really key point in the sources is that after this adjustment phase, many people report having more stable, sustained energy throughout the day, often feeling clearer and more focused than when they were eating constantly.
Oh, it gets better.
It often does, yes. But the emphasis is on working with your energy levels. Rest when you feel you need to rest. Don't try to just power through severe fatigue, especially early on.
Right. Listen to your body again. And those emotional shifts we touched on earlier. Do they tend to become more noticeable during the fast itself?
Oh, definitely. The sources describe the fasting window as a time when emotions that might often be masked or, dampened by constant eating can really surface.
Like what kind of emotions?
You might experience unexpected feelings. Maybe anxiety, frustration, sadness, a sense of vulnerability. Or on the flip side, you might gain sudden moments of real emotional clarity. They emphasize trying to view these not as problems to be fixed, but more as invitations. Invitations to look a bit deeper.
An invitation to explore what you're truly feeling or needing underneath it all.
Precisely. The sources suggest using this time for a bit of self-inquiry, maybe journaling about it, meditating, or just simply sitting with the feelings with some self-compassion. It's kind of like an emotional detox happening alongside the physical one.
A sacred space for introspection. I like that framing. So the whole experience is really presented as a journey, isn't it? And not always linear, maybe involving some physical challenges, but also potentially profound breakthroughs. Requires patience, curiosity.
Definitely. It's presented as a process of uncovering, both physically and emotionally.
Okay, so moving on from the sort of practical mechanics and what to expect, the sources really seem to frame fasting as less of a rigid rule-following exercise and more of a holistic practice, almost like an art form or finding a rhythm.
Yeah, I think that's a really important shift in perspective they offer. They emphasize it's about returning to a kind of simplicity, tapping into your body's innate wisdom, and viewing the fast itself as more of a ritual of renewal. And it's supported by what they call a toolbox.
A toolbox for fasting. Okay, what does that include?
Well, it includes practical ideas, like maybe creating a little daily fasting checklist for yourself.
Oh, like what kind of things?
Things like hydrate immediately when you wake up. Set a clear intention for your fast that day. Asking yourself, why am I choosing this pause today? Incorporate some gentle movement. Maybe mindfully track your fasting window, but without being super rigid about it.
Right.
Pausing when you feel hunger cues just to check in, like we talked about. planning how you'll break your fast gently,
Hmm.
and maybe taking just a moment for reflection or journaling at the end of the day or at the end of your fast.
Setting an intention.
Hmm.
That feels like it really shifts the whole mindset, doesn't it?
Totally. It transforms it from something you can't do, I can't eat, into something you're actively choosing to do with a purpose behind it.
Yeah.
The toolbox also includes those supportive drinks we mentioned, beyond just water and black coffee,
Yeah.
highlighting specific herbal teas and also broths.
Okay, what are some of those specific teas the sources mention again, and why are they helpful?
Sure. They mention things like peppermint, often good for digestion. Ginger can be warming and might ease any potential nausea. Chamomile is great for calm. Nettle is rich in minerals. Dandelion root can offer some liver support. And maybe fennel or licorice root if you struggle with sweet cravings.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, though they do caution to be careful with licorice root if you have high blood pressure. But generally, these teas offer flavor, maybe some gentle benefits, without actually breaking the fast.
Okay. And what about broths? I thought broth had calories. Wouldn't that break a fast?
Good point. Healing broths are mentioned specifically for breaking your fast or sometimes in modified fasting protocols, not usually during a strict water fast.
Okay, so for refeeding.
Exactly. Bone broth is highlighted because it's rich in gut-soothing things like collagen and minerals. Vegetable broth is a gentler alkaline option. And miso broth, because it's fermented, can be good for refeeding and providing minerals too.
And how should you drink them?
The sources suggest sipping warm fluids like these slowly, making it a kind of mindful ritual to gently ease your digestive system back into action.
Okay, so the cool box helps you navigate the fasting window itself and also transition out of it gently. What about tools for your mindset during the fast?
Absolutely crucial. The sources suggest using things like inspirational quotes or affirmations as anchors, especially when things feel a bit challenging.
Can you give some examples?
Sure, they gave examples like, I trust my body, I honor its rhythms. Or maybe something like, this pause is powerful, this space is sacred. They suggest writing these down, maybe putting them somewhere visible, as a reminder and a source of support.
That's a nice idea. And what about connecting deeper during that time?
Yeah, they suggest mini meditations or simple nature rituals. Just taking a few moments to sit in silence, focusing on your breath, maybe repeating one of those affirmations quietly to yourself. Or consciously connecting with nature, even in small ways. Like we said, walking barefoot on grass or earth if you can, sitting under a tree for a few minutes, just watching the sunrise or sunset.
Why are those helpful?
These practices are really highlighted for their ability to ground you, reduce stress, and connect you to a sense of presence and calm. And that feeling profoundly supports the whole fasting experience, making it feel less like a struggle.
It really sounds like these tools help you find a different kind of nourishment during the fasting window, doesn't it? Something beyond just the absence of food.
That's exactly the core idea, I think. It's about supporting your whole journey, body, mind, and spirit, finding alignment, and making the practice feel, well, empowering rather than purely restrictive.
Okay. Now, as powerful and positive as all these benefits and tools sound, the sources are also really responsible, aren't they? They stress quite clearly that fasting isn't necessarily for everyone, and safety has to come first.
Yes, this is a really critical section of the material we looked at. Fasting absolutely needs to be approached with caution and a good deal of self-awareness.
So who specifically should be cautious, according to these sources?
Well, they mentioned a few groups. Individuals with thyroid issues, for example, as fasting can sometimes impact metabolic rate and energy levels.
Okay.
Also, those dealing with adrenal fatigue or significant chronic stress. Intense fasting could potentially add more stress to an already overloaded system, maybe even raising cortisol levels, which you don't want.
Right.
And hormonal imbalances are highlighted, particularly for women, maybe especially women over 40 or 50. Overly aggressive fasting could potentially disrupt menstrual cycles or worsen symptoms like mood swings or low energy.
So for those groups, what's the advice? Just avoid fasting.
Not necessarily avoid altogether, but the advice is definitely to monitor how you feel incredibly closely, and probably consider much gentler approaches, maybe shorter fasting windows like 12 or 14 hours, or focusing on time-restricted eating within daylight hours, or perhaps trying a fasting mimicking diet instead of a full fast. Really, tuning in is key.
And when is it absolutely essential to get medical advice before even thinking about starting?
The sources are very, very clear on this. If you have any chronic health conditions like diabetes, heart disease, autoimmune disorders, or if you're taking medications that need to be taken with food, definitely if you are pregnant or breastfeeding, if you have any history of eating disorders, or if you're dealing with significant unintentional weight loss or have diagnosed nutritional deficiencies.
So, quite a few situations.
Yes. In any of those cases, the sources stress you must consult with your doctor or a qualified healthcare professional first. They can help assess if fasting is even appropriate for you, and if so, how to do it safely given your specific health picture.
That's really important advice. Okay, so assuming it is appropriate for someone, how do the sources suggest making fasting a sustainable long-term part of your lifestyle rather than just some temporary diet you do for a week?
Yeah, the focus really shifts here towards wisdom and flexibility for the long haul. First off, preventing nutrient deficiencies is absolutely key.
How do you do that if you're fasting regularly?
The sources stress that during your eating window, you must prioritize eating really nutrient-dense foods. We're talking high-quality proteins, plenty of healthy fats, loads of leafy greens, and colorful vegetables, maybe some fermented foods for gut health.
So quality over quantity.
Definitely quality, but also making sure you get enough quantity. It's crucial not to chronically undereat during your eating window. That's a trap people can fall into, and it can lead to long-term problems like chronic fatigue, metabolic slowdown, or hormonal disruption. So nourish yourself well when you are eating.
Right. What about supplements? Do the sources recommend them?
They suggest considering strategic, maybe seasonal supplementation if needed. Things like vitamin D, magnesium, maybe B vitamins, iron, especially for menstruating women, or a good quality whole food multivitamin. But the key is these are generally best taken with food during your eating window for absorption, unless you're doing a supervised extended fast where electrolytes might be used differently.
Okay.
Electrolytes like salt, potassium, magnesium are generally fine, even helpful during the fast itself, though.
Got it. So, nourish well, maybe supplement wisely. What else is key for sustainability?
Perhaps the most important piece of advice, repeated throughout the sources for making it sustainable, is deeply listening to your body.
There it is.
It comes up constantly. Your internal signals really are your best guide. The sources say don't just push through persistent fatigue day after day, or ignore constant dizziness, or significant mood swings, or major disruptions to your sleep or hormonal cycles.
Those are warning signs.
Exactly. There's signs that your body is saying, hey, this might be too much right now, or something needs to adjust. It's a signal to maybe shorten your fasting window, take a break for a few days, or reevaluate if your current approach is really serving you.
And tracking how you feel seems like it would be important for that kind of listening.
Yes, but again, not necessarily rigid, obsessive tracking. The sources suggest more like mindful journaling or maybe using a simple app just to jot down notes on your energy levels, your mood, sleep quality, digestion. For women, tracking menstrual cycle patterns alongside fasting can be really insightful too. The key question to keep asking yourself is basically, how did my body feel today? Did fasting seem to support me or did it feel like it strained me? Over time, this builds real self-knowledge.
Okay. And what about integrating fasting with other healthy habits?
Oh, that's presented as really essential for long-term success and well-being. Combining your fasting practice with things like regular gentle movement yoga, walking, or incorporating stress-reducing practices like breath work or meditation.
Spending time in nature.
Yes, nature immersion. Even things like taking breaks from screens like a digital fast can complement and enhance the benefits. It helps make fasting feel like just one integrated part of a healthy lifestyle, rather than some isolated, restrictive thing you're doing.
So it's really about finding a sustainable rhythm that supports your unique body over the long haul, built on nourishing yourself well when you eat, listening really deeply to your body's signals, and staying flexible.
Exactly. It's more like cultivating a relationship with your body in the practice, not racing towards some finish line.
Okay, let's try and clarify one of the most common points of confusion that the sources address directly. What actually breaks a fast? Because people ask this all the time.
Ah, yes, the million-dollar question indeed. It causes so much confusion. So the underlying principle, as we touched on, is really about avoiding significant calories and avoiding anything that triggers a major digestive response or a big insulin spike.
Right.
So what the sources generally agree doesn't break a fast: plain water, obviously still and sparkling. A tiny squeeze of lemon or lime in your water is usually fine. Unsweetened herbal teas, totally fine.
And black coffee.
Black coffee, again, with no additives, is generally considered okay for most people and most types of fasts. A teaspoon of apple cider vinegar diluted in water, also generally fine. And a pinch of good quality salt or taking electrolyte supplements, those are usually okay and often helpful.
Okay, so basically, things with zero or virtually zero calories that don't mess with insulin much. Those are your allies during the fast.
Exactly. Your fasting window allies. Good way to put it.
What about the gray areas, though? The things people are often less sure about, like artificial sweeteners or adding fat to your coffee, bulletproof style.
You're right. The tricky ones. Okay, artificial sweeteners like stevia, erythritol. The sources put these in a kind of caution category.
Why? They're 0 calorie.
They are, but the issue is they can sometimes still trigger hunger signals or even a small insulin response in some individuals, which might interfere with your metabolic goals or potentially disrupt the gut rest aspect of the fast. The general advice seems to be if your main goal is metabolic health or deep gut healing, probably best to avoid them.
Okay. And bulletproof coffee with butter or a MCT oil.
Right. That definitely does contain calories, quite a few usually. So technically, yes, it breaks a fast from a pure calorie perspective.
But people say it helps them fast longer.
The sources acknowledge that. They explain that while the type of calories pure fat might support ketosis, fat burning, and mental focus for some, it's not calorie-free. It will interrupt processes like autophagy that require a true caloric deficit. So it really depends on your primary goal for fasting. If it's just extending the time between meals and staying in ketosis, maybe it fits. If it's cellular cleanup via autophagy, then no.
Got it. What about things like bone broth or collagen powder?
Similar situation. Both contain amino acids and calories, so technically, yes, they break a strict fast. However, the sources do mention that bone broth specifically is sometimes used strategically in certain modified fasting protocols, or often as that gentle way to transition into or out of a fast because it's so easy on the gut. But if your goal is a strict water-only fast for maximum autophagy, then generally you'd avoid these during the fasting window itself.
Yeah. And lastly, what about supplements during the fast, beside electrolytes?
Right. So electrolytes like magnesium, potassium, sodium, generally fine and often beneficial during the fast. However, things like fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, K, or omega-3 fish oils, most multivitamins, and especially iron, those really should be taken with food during your eating window.
Why?
Better absorption, mainly, and also to avoid potential stomach upset on an empty stomach.
Okay. What about things like probiotics or digestive enzymes or adaptogens?
For those, the advice is generally to check the labels carefully for any fillers like sugars or starches that might break a fast. If you're unsure, the safest bet is usually to take them with food during your eating window, unless you're working with a practitioner who specifically guides you otherwise as part of a supervised fasting protocol.
It really seems like the nuance is key here, doesn't it? It depends a lot on your specific goals for that particular fast.
Precisely. Understanding why something might break a fast or alter certain benefits helps you make informed, empowered choices based on what you're trying to achieve.
And just as important as knowing what doesn't break it is knowing how to break it properly when the time comes.
Oh, absolutely crucial. How you reintroduce food matters a lot.
Why does the timing and the content of breaking your fast matter so much?
Well, the sources emphasize breaking your fast gently and wisely because after that period of digestive rest, your system is in a very receptive, almost sensitive state. You don't want to shock it.
Okay, so what should you start with? What kind of foods?
They recommend starting with just a small portion of something really easily digestible.
Like what, for example?
Things like a small cup of that warm bone broth we mentioned, or maybe just a few soaked almonds or macadamia nuts. A small, simple green smoothie could work. Or even just some lightly steamed, non-starchy vegetables like zucchini or asparagus, just something gentle to wake up digestion.
So start small and simple.
Exactly. And then the recommendation is usually to wait maybe 30 minutes or so after that initial small starter before you have your first full balanced meal.
Why the wait?
It just gives your digestive system a little time to gently ease back into action before handling a larger load.
Okay. And that first full meal, what should that look like?
It should ideally be well-balanced, include some healthy fats, some good quality protein, and some fiber-rich carbohydrates, preferably from whole food sources.
Can you give an example?
Sure, maybe something like some avocado with scrambled eggs and sautéed spinach.
Oh.
Or a more substantial smoothie with added seeds, protein powder, and berries. Or perhaps some steamed vegetables drizzled with olive oil alongside a piece of fish or some quinoa. Something nourishing, but not overly heavy.
And what should you definitely avoid when breaking a fast? What's the big no-no?
The sources strongly advise against breaking your fast with anything really heavy, greasy, or super high in sugar or refined carbs.
Like pizza or donuts.
Exactly, or a big bowl of pasta or sugary cereal. Doing that can cause really rapid blood sugar spikes and subsequent crashes, bloating, stomach discomfort. It can basically undo some of the very benefits, like improved insulin sensitivity that you are aiming for with the fast in the first place. So ease back in gently.
Okay. Any quick myths about fasting that the sources help debunk while we're on the topic?
Yeah, a few common ones definitely came up. One is that you absolutely need to fast for 24 hours or longer to get any benefits. That's not true. The sources show even shorter windows, like 12 to 14 hours, consistently practiced, offer significant health advantages.
No.
Another is that black coffee definitely breaks your fast. For most people, for most goals, it doesn't seem to.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the biggest myth is that fasting has to feel like punishment or pure deprivation. It really shouldn't. Taking supportive things like water, salt, herbal teas is encouraged. It should feel like a supportive practice, not torture.
Right. It all comes back to making those empowered choices based on the knowledge you gain from sources like these.
It truly does. Integrating this kind of understanding mindfully really makes all the difference in having a positive and sustainable experience.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive into all the sources you shared on fasting, it's really clear, isn't it? This isn't just some restrictive diet strategy people are trying out.
No, not at all. It really emerges as this powerful, kind of multi-layered tool. It's a rhythm you find and maybe truly a profound relationship you build with yourself.
Yeah.
The sources consistently frame it less as deprivation and more as an act of liberation in a way, a practice that teaches you that you're not simply, beholden to every craving or impulse.
But capable of conscious choice.
Exactly. Capable of conscious choice, of finding presence even when faced with discomfort.
And it serves as a powerful reminder that nourishment actually extends far beyond what's on your plate.
Oh, absolutely. It includes your breath, getting sunlight, finding stillness, practicing self-compassion, deliberately creating space in your life. It feels like a return to a kind of ancient simplicity and wisdom that feels maybe more relevant than ever today.
Yeah. And reflecting on that emphasis throughout the sources, on the power of the intentional pause, it really makes you consider our modern world, doesn't it?
It really does. This whole deep dive kind of leaves you pondering, how does this ancient practice, this intentional creation of pauses, pausing from food, pausing from constant input, how does that challenge the pervasive, always-on, constant consumption nature of our lives today?
Yeah, not just with food.
Not just with food, but with information overload, with endless stimulation, with the constant stream of expectations we face externally and internally.
So the final thought is really, what might actually happen if you consciously, deliberately created more of that kind of space in your own life?
Exactly. What unfolds in that pause? Something definitely worth carrying with you as you explore this practice or just navigate modern life.